Hello, my name is Jess, and this is my ETC review presentation for Art 710 at Edinboro University. So I decided to focus on Dreamcatchers because it is an art that travels throughout the levels of the ETC. First, let me give you a very brief history. Dreamcatchers are a Native American craft that are commonly gifted to newborns. It is believed that the spirit world energies can affect us as we sleep, which can cause nightmares. Dreamcatchers are made to trap that negative energy in its spider-like webbing, while the positive energy is guided down the feathers back to the owner. Among Native American populations, this art is a bit controversial, some seeing it as an important symbol, while others think it has been made tacky due to the side effects of cultural appropriation. Traditionally, dreamcatchers are made out of a ring of red willow, sinew, beading, and feathers. Modern ones are typically made with a metal crafting hoop, sinew or twine or other materials, leather, and various other decorative items. Now, I was taught by my mother and sister how to make dream catchers, but I did find a website that has great diagrams to show the process of making one. And the reason I've included this today is because unlike other art such as painting, doodling, or clay, a very specific, strict, step-by-step process is required in order to create a dream catcher. For example, it's important to know ahead of time if someone wants beading in the webbing because it is very difficult to go back without undoing all of your work. So on the left is my piece, a non-traditional double hoop dream catcher. My personal goal was to create a landscape of sorts. The first ring represents the sun and the sky, while the bottom is the water on the earth. As discussed before, the process of making a dream catcher is strict and it has to be done in a very specific order that requires quite a bit of practice before being able to get it right. That's why I would classify it as a structured and complex art on the MDV. In regards to the ETC, the process starts on the cognitive and symbolic levels. Cognitive handles the planning, while the symbolic informs the design. Both cognitive and symbolic levels are creative areas that require a lot of higher thought processes, reflection, and focus. Cognitive specifically centers on the conceptual, sequential, and problem-solving elements of creativity. Symbolic centers on meaning, personal interpretations, and cultural imagery. Outside of Dreamcatchers, other medias that tap into these levels include photography, collage, comics, and self-symbols. Thus, these levels may be difficult to reach for those who are really young, someone who's overwhelmed with emotion and can't quite think straight, or have an intellectual disability. The process now moves on to the kinesthetic and sensory levels of the ETC. Wrapping the hoops and creating the webbing requires the use of both hands and an active interaction with the materials as one moves around the object with repeated gestures. The materials used have a variety of textures. The wrapping is a soft suede leather. The twine I happen to use in this case kind of felt like a tiny rope, and the feathers has that ticklish sensation while working with it. Both levels focus on the physicality of art making, from expressive motion, kinesthetic, to tactile experiences, sensory. Other medias that land on these levels include sculpting materials like clay or plaster, fabric or fiber arts, and finger painting. These two levels can be great for engaging young children, to releasing emotional energy, and for creating a memorable experience. On the other hand, those with mobility restrictions, sensory sensitivities, and those with low energy may not do so well here. Finally, the process ends on the perceptual and affective levels, though they also contribute to the cognitive and symbolic levels earlier. The finishing touches and final decoration on the dream catchers leaves some room for spontaneity since it doesn't affect the complex webbing. These levels are used to answer the following questions. How will the feathers or beads hang? How far from the hoop? Which beads or feathers and how many? What color should they be? Shape, perceptual, and color, affective, really tie everything together for an expressive dream catcher. Other art forms that play at these levels include painting, photography, drawing, or coloring. I feel as though most populations can work in this area, with the exception of those with visual disabilities, such as distortions to depth perception or being severely colorblind. It should also be noted that structures and colors carry very strong emotional connections, so there's a possibility that it can trigger some people. The creative level is typically described as the vehicle that moves us through the various levels while creating art. While it can take one all over the ETC, I think there are two common paths that are taken: elevating or regressing. Elevating is going from the kinesthetic sensory levels up to the cognitive symbolic. In other words, it's building up from a childlike exploring and energetic release to a more adult-like processing and reflection. For example, a person might start with experimenting with a piece of clay before progressing to working out its shape and ending with a more solidified purpose to the creation itself. In my opinion, this path is good for those who are brand new to art or very inexperienced youth, since it builds them to more complex projects from a low-pressure starting point. Regressing is the reverse, a trend down the ETC. This is working from a set idea or plan to getting lost in the process and focusing on just the feeling and the action itself. The Dreamcatcher technically falls on this path, but let's use the clay example again. In this case, a person has a set goal in mind for what this piece should be, but at some point becomes very focused on the feeling of the clay and the movement in creating its form. This path might be best used for those who get in their heads a lot or are too controlled, since it starts them in something familiar and then guides them down to a more freely expressive place. So, thank you for your time. Here are my references, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.